Winnie-the-Pooh, Winnie-the-Pooh. Hi everyone, and it is our last Friday of Winnie-the-Pooh. Now I may do a couple of stories, Jocelyn. I may do a couple of stories with Jocelyn during the week and paste them together. So we may look different. But these stories the chapters are a little long, and Jocelyn is getting a little long-winded with them. So I thought I'd split it up a little bit for the last video. So today, we got 3 chapters! Yay! And we're going to finish the book of Winnie-the-Pooh, which is by A.A. Milan, and it is illustrated by Ernest Shepherd. I don't know if I did that in the beginning, but I will do it on the last video as well. So today, let us begin with chapter 8, and we are going to read the one in which Christopher Robin leads an expedition to the North Pole. Let us begin. One fine day, Pooh had stumped up to the top of the forest to see if his friend Christopher Robin was interested in bears at all. At breakfast that morning, a simple meal of marmalade spread lightly over a honeycomb or two. He had suddenly thought of a new song. It began like this. Sing ho for the life of a bear. When he had got as far as this, he stretched his head and thought to himself, "That's a very good start for a song, but what about the second line, Jocelyn?" He tried singing ho 2 or 3 times, but it didn't seem to help. Perhaps it would be better, he thought, if I sang hi for the life of a bear. So he sang it. But it wasn't. Very well then, he said, I shall sing that very first line twice, and perhaps if I sing it very quickly, I shall find myself singing the 3rd and 4th lines before I have time to think of them. And that will be a good song. Now then. Sing ho for the life of a bear. Sing ho for the life of a bear. I don't mind if it rains or snows, 'cause I've got a lot of honey on my nice new nose. I don't much care if it rains or thaws or snows, 'cause I've got a lot of money on my nice clean paws. Sing ho for a bear. Sing ho for a Pooh, and I'll have a little something in an hour or 2. He was so pleased with his song that he sang it all the way to the top of the forest. And if I go on singing it much longer, he thought, Jocelyn, it will be time for the little something. And then the last line won't be true. So he turned it into a hum instead. Christopher Robin was sitting outside his door, putting on his big boots. As soon as he saw the big boots, Pooh knew that an adventure was going to happen, and he brushed the honey off his nose with the back of his paw, and he spruced himself up as well as he could so as to look ready for anything. Good morning, Christopher Robin, he called out. Hello, Pooh Bear, I can't get this boot on. That's bad, said Pooh. Do you think you could very kindly lean against me? 'Cause I keep pulling so hard that I fell over backwards. Pooh sat down, dug his feet into the ground, and pushed hard against Christopher Robin's back. And Christopher Robin pushed hard against his. And pulled at his boot until he had got it on. And that's that, said Pooh. What do we do next? We are all going on an expedition, said Christopher Robin as he got up and brushed himself. Thank you, Pooh. Going on a expedition? said Pooh eagerly. I don't think I've ever been on one of those. Where are we going on this expedition? Expedition, silly old bear. It's an X in it. Oh, said Pooh. I know, but he didn't really. We're going to discover the North Pole. Oh, said Pooh again. What is the North Pole, Jocelyn? Do you know? It's just a thing you discover, said Christopher Robin carelessly, not being quite sure of himself. I know. Oh, I see, said Pooh. Are bears any good at discovering it? Of course they are, and Rabbit and Kanga and all of you. It's an expedition. That's what an expedition means. A long line of everybody. You better tell the others to get ready, while I see if my gun's all right, and we must all bring provisions. Bring what? Things to eat. Oh, said Pooh happily. I thought you said provisions. I'll go and tell them. And he stumbled off. The first person he met was Rabbit. Hello, Rabbit, he said. Is that you? Let's pretend it isn't, said Rabbit, and see what happens. I've got a message for you. I'll give it to him. We're going on an exposition with Christopher Robin. What is it when you're on it? A sort of boat, I think, said Pooh. Oh, that sort. Yes, we're going to discover a pole or something. It was a mole? Anyhow, we're going to discover it. We are we? Said Rabbit. Yes, and we've got to bring things to eat with us in case we want to eat them. Now I'm going down to Piglet's. Tell Kanga, will you? He left Rabbit and hurried down to Piglet's house. The Piglet was sitting on the ground at the door of his house, blowing happily at a dandelion and wondering whether it would be this year, next year, sometime, or never. He had just discovered that it would be never and was trying to remember what it was, Jocelyn, and hoping it wasn't anything nice when Pooh came up. Oh, Piglet, said Pooh excitingly, we're going on an expedition, all of us, with things to eat, to discover something. To discover what? Said Piglet anxiously. Oh, just something. Nothing fierce, I hope. Christopher Robin didn't say anything about fierce. He just said it had an X. It isn't their necks I mind, said Piglet earnestly. It's their teeth. But if Christopher Robin is coming, I don't mind anything. In a little while, they were already at the top of the forest, and the expedition started. First came Christopher Robin and Rabbit, then Piglet and Pooh, then Kanga with Roo in her pocket, and Owl. Then Eeyore. And at the end, in a long line, all Rabbit's friends and relations. I didn't ask them, explained Rabbit carelessly. They just came. They always do. They can march at the inn after Eeyore. What I say, said Eeyore, is that it's unsettling. I didn't want to come on this expo, what Pooh said. I only came to oblige. But here I am. And if I am the end of the expo, what we're talking about, then let me be the end. But if every time I want to sit down for a little rest, I have to brush away half a dozen of Rabbit's smaller friends and relations first, then this isn't an expo, whatever it is, at all. It's simply a confused noise. That's what I say. I see what Eeyore means, said Owl, if you ask me. not asking anybody, said Eeyore. I'm just telling everybody. We can look for the North Pole, or we can play here we go gathering nuts in May. With the end of the part of the ant's nest, it's all the same to me. There was a shout from the top of the line. Come on, called Christopher Robin. Come on, called Pooh and Piglet. Come on, called Owl. We're starting, said Rabbit. I must go. And he hurried off to the front of the exposition with Christopher Robin. All right, said Eeyore, we're going, only don't blame me. So off they went to discover the pole. And as they walked, they chattered to each other of this and that, all except Pooh, who was making up a song, Jocelyn. This is the first verse, he said to Piglet when he was ready with it. First verse of what? My song. What song? This one. Which one? Well, if you listen, Piglet, you'll hear it. How do you know I'm not listening? Pooh couldn't finish that one, so he began to sing. They all went off to discover the pole, Owl and Piglet and Rabbit and all. It's a thing you discover, and I've been told by Owl and Piglet and Rabbit and all. Eeyore, Christopher, Robin, and Pooh, and Rabbit's relations all went to, and where the pole was, none of them knew. Sing hey for Owl and Rabbit and all. Right, Jocelyn? Hush, said Christopher Robin, turning around to Pooh. We're just coming to a dangerous place. Hush, said Pooh, turning around quickly to Piglet. Hush, said Piglet to Kanga. Hush, said Kanga to Owl. While Roo said hush several times to himself very quickly. Hush, said Owl to Eeyore. Hush, said Eeyore to a terrible voice to all Rabbit's friends and relations. And hush, they said hastily to each other all down the line until it got to the last one of them all. And the last and the smallest friend and relation was so upset to find that the whole exposition was saying hush to him. And then he buried himself head downwards in a crack in the ground and stayed there for 2 days until the danger was over, and then went home in a great hurry and lived quietly with his aunt ever afterwards. His name was Alexander Beetle. They had come to a stream which twisted and tumbled between high rocky banks, Jocelyn, and Christopher Robin saw at once how dangerous it was. It's just the place, he explained, for an ambush. What sort of bush? Whispered Piglet. And Pooh? A gorse bush. My dear Pooh, said Owl in his superior way, don't you know what an ambush is? Owl, said Piglet, looking around at him severely. Pooh's whisper was a perfectly private whisper, and there was no need. An ambush, said Owl, is a sort of surprise. So is a gorse bush sometimes? Said Pooh. An ambush, as I was about to explain to Pooh, said Piglet, is a sort of surprise. If people jump out at you suddenly, that's an ambush, said Owl. It's an ambush, Pooh, when people jump at you suddenly, explained Piglet. Pooh now knew what an ambush was. Said that a goose bush was sprung at him suddenly one day when he fell off a tree, and he had taken 6 days to get all the prickles out of himself. We are not talking about goose bushes, said Owl a little crossly. I am, said Pooh. They were climbing very cautiously up the stream now, going from rock to rock, Jocelyn, and after they had gone a little way, they came to a place where the banks widened out at each side, so that on each side of the water there was a level strip of grass on which they could sit down and rest. As soon as he saw this, Christopher Robin called, "Halt!" and they all sat down and rested. "I think," said Christopher Robin, "that we ought to eat all our provisions now, so that we shan't have so much to carry." "Eat all of our what?" said Pooh. "All that we've brought," said Piglet, getting to work. "That's a good idea," said Pooh, and he got to work too. "Have you all got something?" asked Christopher Robin with his mouth full. "All except me," said Eeyore, as usual. He looked around at them in his melancholy way. "I suppose none of you are sitting on a thistle by any chance?" "I believe I am," said Pooh. "Ow!" He got up and looked behind him. "Yes, I was. I thought so." "Thank you, Pooh, if you're quite finished with it." He moved across to Pooh's place and began to eat. "It don't do them any good, you know, sitting on them," he went on, and he looked up, munching. "Thanks all the life out of them. Remember that another time, all of you, a little consideration, a little thought for others makes all the difference." As soon as he had finished his lunch, Christopher Robin whispered to Rabbit, and Rabbit said, "Yes, yes, of course," and they walked a little way up the stream together. "I didn't want the others to hear," said Christopher Robin. "Quite so," said Rabbit, looking important. I wonder, it's only, Rabbit, I suppose you don't know. What does the North Pole look like?" "Well," said Rabbit, stroking his whiskers, "now you're asking me?" "I did not know once, only I've sort of forgotten," said Christopher Robin carelessly. "It's a funny thing," said Rabbit, "but I've sort of forgotten too. Although I did know once. I suppose it's just a pole stuck in the ground." "Should to be a pole," said Rabbit, "because all calling a pole, if it's a pole, well, I should think it would be sticking in the ground, shouldn't you? Because there would be nowhere else to stick it." "Yes, that's what I thought. The only thing," said Rabbit, "is where is it sticking?" "That's what we're looking for," said Christopher Robin. They went back to the others, and Piglet was lying on his back, sleeping peacefully. Roo was washing his face and paws in the stream, while Kanga explained to everybody proudly that this was the first time he had ever washed his face himself. And Owl Jocelyn was telling Kanga an interesting anecdote full of long words like encyclopedia and rhododendron, to which Kanga wasn't listening. "I don't hold with all of this washing," grumbled Eeyore. "This modern, behind-the-ears nonsense. What do you think, Pooh?" "Well," said Pooh, "I think..." But we shall never know what Pooh thought, for there came a sudden squeak from Roo, a splash, and a loud cry of alarm from Kanga. "So much for washing," said Eeyore. "Roo's fallen in!" cried Rabbit, and he and Christopher Robin came rushing down to the rescue. "Look at me, swimming!" squeaked Roo from the middle of his pool, and was hurried down a waterfall into the next pool. "Are you all right, Roo dear?" called Kanga anxiously. "Yes," said Roo. "Look at me, and down he went over the next waterfall into another pool. Everybody was doing something to help, Piglet, wide awake suddenly, was jumping up and down and making "ooh, I say" noises. Owl was explaining that in case of a sudden and temporary immersion, the important thing was to keep the head above water. Kanga was jumping along the bank saying, "Are you sure you're all right, Roo dear?" To which Roo, from whatever pool he was in at the moment, was answering, "Look at me swimming!" Eeyore had turned around and hung his tail over the first pool into which Roo fell, and with his back to the accident, was grumbling quietly to himself and saying, "All this washing, but catch on to my tail, little Roo, and you will be all right." And Christopher Robin and Rabbit came hurrying past Eeyore and was calling out to the others in front of them. "All right, Roo, I'm coming," called Christopher Robin. "Get something across the stream, lower down, some of you fellas," called Rabbit. But Pooh was getting something. 2 poohs below, Roo was standing with a long pole in his paws, and Kanga came up and took one end of it, and between them they held it across the lower part of the pool, and Roo, still bumbling proudly, "Look at me, swimming," drifted up against it and climbed out. "Did you see me swimming?" squeaked Roo excitingly, while Kanga scolded him and rubbed him down. "Pooh, did you see me swimming? That's called swimming, what I was doing." "Rabbit, did you see what I was doing? Swimming?" "Hello, Piglet, I say Piglet, what do you think I was doing? I was swimming!" "Christopher Robin, did you see me?" But Christopher Robin wasn't listening. He was looking at Pooh. "Pooh," he said, "where did you find that pole?" Pooh looked at the pole in his hands. "I just found it," he said. "I thought it ought to be useful. I just picked it up." "Pooh," said Christopher Robin sullenly, "the expedition is over. You have found the North Pole. Yay!" "Oh," said Pooh. Eeyore was sitting with his tail in the water when all got back to him. "Tell Roo to be quick, somebody," he said. "My tail's getting cold. I don't want to mention it, but I just mentioned it. I don't want to complain, but there it is. My tail's cold." "Here I am," squeaked Roo. "Oh, there you are. Did you see me swimming?" Eeyore took his tail out of the water and swished it from side to side. "As I expected," he said. "Lost all feeling, numbed it. That's what it's done, numbed it. Well, as long as nobody minds, I suppose it's all right." "Poor old Eeyore, I'll try it out for you," said Christopher Robin, and he took out his handkerchief and rubbed it up. "Thank you, Christopher Robin. You're the only one who seems to understand about tails. They don't think. That's what's the matter with some of these others. There's no imagination. A tail isn't a tail to them. It's just a little bit extra at the back." "Never mind, Eeyore," said Christopher Robin, rubbing his hardest. "Is that better?" "It's feeling more like a tail, perhaps. It belongs again, if you know what I mean." "Hello, Eeyore," said Pooh, coming up to them with his pole. "Hello, Pooh. Thank you for asking, but I shall be able to use it again in a day or 2. "Use what?" said Pooh. "What we are talking about." "I wasn't talking about anything," said Pooh, looking puzzled. "My mistake again. I thought you were saying how sorry you were about my tail being all numb. And could you do anything to help?" "No," said Pooh, "that wasn't me," he said. He thought for a little and then suggested hopefully, "Perhaps it was somebody else. What do you think, Jocelyn?" "Well, thank him for me when you see him." Pooh looked anxiously at Christopher Robin. "Pooh's found the North Pole," said Christopher Robin. "Isn't that lovely?" Pooh looked modestly down. "Is that it?" said Eeyore. "Yes," said Christopher Robin. "Is that what we were looking for?" "Yes," said Pooh. "Oh," said Eeyore. "Well, anyhow, it didn't rain," he said. They stuck the pole in the ground and Christopher Robin tied a message onto it. "North Pole discovered by Pooh. Pooh found it." Then they all went home again, and I think, but I am not quite sure, that Roo had a hot bath and went straight to bed. But Pooh went back to his own house, and feeling very proud of what he had done, had a little something to revive himself. It's time to finish Winnie-the-Pooh. We've got 2 chapters to read today, so I want to begin. But Jocelyn and I wanted to show you her 100 Acre Wood tree, Winnie-the-Pooh's Legos, and all the details. Isn't it gorgeous? But that's not all. Can you recognize everybody? We got Pooh holding his red balloon, the rabbit, Piglet, Tigger, and Eeyore is, of course, on top of the P in her train. And I just didn't have him in there because usually he's separated from the group because he's a sad guy. But then I also wanted y'all to see this part right here. It opens. And now they still have these sets. I've seen a couple at the Lego store in the mall, but they go quickly. Oh, goodness. And this is no review at all. We just thought it would be nice to show y'all Pooh's house and the details of it. Isn't that sweet? Got his honey pots. And there's actually a copy of Winnie-the-Pooh on the bed. So anyways, that is Pooh's tree in 100 Acre Wood, Jocelyn's Lego set. And of course, like I said, this is no endorsement at all. So let us begin with the last and the rest of the story of Winnie-the-Pooh, Winnie-the-Pooh. We got 2 more chapters and then we will be finished. So let us begin with chapter 9, in which Piglet is entirely surrounded by, Jocelyn, water. So let us begin. It rained and it rained and it rained. Piglet told himself that never in all his life, and he was goodness knows how old there was, or 4, never had he seen so much rain. Days and days and days. If only, he thought, as he looked out of the window, I had been at Pooh's house, or Christopher Robin's house, or Rabbit's house when it began to rain. Then I should have had company all this time. Instead of being here all alone with nothing to do except wonder when it will stop. And he imagined himself with Pooh saying, "Did you ever see such rain, Pooh?" And Pooh saying, "Isn't it awful, Piglet?" And Piglet saying, "I wonder how it is over Christopher Robin's way." Said Pooh saying, "I should think poor old Rabbit is about flooded out by this time." It would have been jolly to talk like this, and really it wasn't much good having anything exciting like floods if you couldn't share them with somebody. I know, Joss. For it was rather exciting. The little dry digits in which Piglet had nosed about so often had become streams. Ooh. And the little streams across which he had splashed were rivers. And the river between those steep banks they had played so happily had spread out in its own bed and was taking up so much room everywhere that Piglet was beginning to wonder whether it would be coming into his bed soon. It's a little anxious, he said to himself, to be a very small animal entirely surrounded by water. Christopher Robin and Pooh could escape by climbing trees, and Kanga could escape by jumping, and Rabbit could escape by burrowing, and Owl could escape by flying. And Eeyore could escape by making a loud noise until he got rescued. And here I am surrounded by water and I can't do anything. It went on raining, and every day the water got a little higher until now it was nearly up to Piglet's window. And still he hadn't done anything, Jocelyn. There's Pooh, he thought to himself. Pooh hasn't much brain, but he never comes to any harm. He does silly things and they run out right. And there's Owl. Owl hasn't exactly got brain, but he knows things. He would know the right thing to do when surrounded by water. There's Rabbit. He hasn't learnt in books, but he can always think of a clever plan. And there's Kanga. She isn't clever. Kanga isn't, but she would be so anxious about Roo that she would do a good thing to do without thinking about it. It's a mama. And then there's Eeyore. And Eeyore is so miserable anyhow that he wouldn't mind about this. But I wonder what Christopher Robin would do. Then suddenly he remembered a story which Christopher Robin had told him about a man on a desert island who had written something in a bottle and thrown it in the sea. And Piglet thought about if he wrote something in a bottle and threw it in the water, perhaps somebody would come and rescue him. He left the window and began to search his house, all of it that wasn't underwater. And at last he found a pencil and a small piece of dry paper and a bottle with a cork to it. And he wrote on one side of the paper, "Help! Piglet! Me!" And on the other side, "It's me, Piglet! Help! Help!" Then he put the paper in the bottle and he corked the bottle up as tightly as he could, and he leant out of his window as far as he could, lean without falling in, and he threw the bottle as far as he could throw. Splash! And in a little while, it bobbled up again on the water, and he watched it floating slowly away in the distance until his eyes ached with looking. And sometimes he thought it was the bottle, and sometimes he thought it was just a ripple on the water which he was following. And then suddenly he knew that he would never see it again, and that he had done all that he could to save himself. So now, he thought, somebody else will have to do something, and I hope they will do it soon, because if they don't, I shall have to swim, which I can't, so I hope they do it soon. And then he gave a very long sigh and said, I wish Pooh were here. It's so much more friendly with two. When the rain began, Pooh was asleep. It rained, and it rained, and it rained. And he slept, and he slept, and he slept. He had had a tiring day. You remember how he discovered the North Pole? Well, he was so proud of this that he asked Christopher Robin if there were any other poles, such as a bear of a little brain might discover. There's a South Pole, said Christopher Robin, and I expect there's an East Pole and a West Pole too. Though people don't like talking about those, I don't know why. Pooh was very excited when he heard this and suggested that they should have an expedition to discover the East Pole. But Christopher Robin had thought of something else to do with Kanga, so Pooh went on to discover the East Pole by himself. When he discovered it or not, I forget, but he was so tired when he got home that, in the very middle of his supper, after he had been eating for a little more than half an hour, he fell fast asleep in his chair and slept, and he slept, and he slept. Then suddenly he was dreaming. Jocelyn, he was at the East Pole, and it was a very cold pole with the coldest sort of snow and ice all over it, Jocelyn. He had found a beehive to sleep in, and there wasn't room for his legs, so he had left them outside. And wild woozos such as inhabit the East Pole came and nibbled all the fur off his legs to make nests for their young. And the more they nibbled, the colder their legs got, until suddenly they woke up with an ow! And there he was, sitting in his chair with his feet in the water, and the water all around him. He splashed in his door and looked out. "This is serious," said Pooh. "I must have an escape." So he took his largest pot of honey and escaped with it to a broad branch of his tree, well above the water, and then he climbed down again and escaped with another pot. And when the whole escape was finished, there was Pooh sitting on his branch, dangling his legs, and there beside him were 10 pots of honey. Two days later, there was Pooh, sitting on his branch, dangling his legs, and there beside him were 4 pots of honey. 3 days later, there was Pooh, sitting on his branch, dangling his legs, and there beside him was 1 hot pot of honey. 4 days later, there was Pooh. And it was on the morning of the 4th day that Piglet's bottle came floating past him. And with one loud cry of honey, Pooh plunged into the water, seized the bottle, and struggled back to his tree again. "Bother," said Pooh as he opened it. "All that wet for nothing. What's that big bit of paper doing?" He took it out and looked at it. "It's a message," he said to himself. "That's what it is, and that letter is a P. So is that a P means Pooh? So it's very important message to me, and I can't read it. I must find Christopher Robin or Owl or Piglet, one of those clever readers who can read things, and they can tell me what this message means. Only I can't swim. Bother." Then he had an idea, and I think that for a bear, a very little brain, it was a good idea, he said to himself. If a bottle can float, then a jar can float too. And if a jar floats, I can sit on top of it if it's a very big jar. So he took his biggest jar and he corked it up. All boats have to have a name, right, Jocelyn, he said. So I shall call mine the Floating Bear. And with these words, he dropped his boat into the water and jumped in after it. For Little Witch Pooh and the Floating Bear were uncertain as to which of them was meant to be on the top. But after trying 1 or 2 different positions, they settled down with the Floating Bear underneath and Pooh triumphantly astride it, paddling victoriously with his feet. Christopher Robin lived at the very top of the forest, and it rained, and it rained, and it rained. But the water couldn't come up to his house. It was rather jolly to look down into the valleys and see the water all around him, but it rained so hard that he stayed indoors most of the time. And thought about things. And every morning he went out with his umbrella and put a stick in the place where the water came up to. And every next morning he went out and couldn't see his stick anymore. So he put another stick in the place where the water came up to. And then he walked home again. I know, Jocelyn, it's getting worse. And each morning he had a shorter way to walk than he had the morning before. On the morning of the 5th day, he saw the water all around him and knew that for the first time in his life, he was on a real island, which was very exciting. It was on this morning that Owl came flying over the water to say, "How do you do?" to his friend Christopher Robin. "I say, Owl," said Christopher Robin, "isn't this fun? I'm on an island." The atmospheric conditions had been very unfavorable lately, said Owl. The what? It's been raining, explained Owl. Yes, said Christopher Robin, it has. The flood level has reached unprecedented height. The who? There's a lot of water about, explained Owl. Yes, said Christopher Robin, there is. However, the prospects are rapidly becoming more favorable at any moment. Have you seen Pooh? No, at any moment. I hope he's all right, said Christopher Robin. I've been wondering about him. I expect Piglet's with him. Do you think they're all right, Owl? I expect so. You see, at any moment. Do go and see Owl, because Pooh hasn't gotten very much brain, and he might do something silly, and I do love him so, Owl. Do you see, Owl? That's all right, said Owl. I'll go back directly, and he flew off. In a little while, he was back again. Pooh isn't there, he said. Not there? Has been there. Has been sitting on a branch of his tree outside his house with 9 pots of honey. But he isn't there now. Do we know where he is? Let's find out. Oh, Pooh, cried Christopher Robin. Where are you? Here I am, said a growly voice behind him. Pooh! They rushed into each other's arms. How did you get here, Pooh? Asked Christopher Robin when he was ready to talk again. On my boat, said Pooh proudly. I had a very important message sent to me in a bottle, and owing to have got some water in my eyes, I couldn't read it, so I brought it to you on my boat. With these proud words, he gave Christopher Robin the message. But it's from Piglet, cried Christopher Robin when he had read it. Isn't there anything about Pooh in it? Asked Bear, looking over his shoulder. Christopher Robin read the message aloud. Oh, are those peas Piglets? I thought they were Poohs. We must rescue him at once. I thought he was with you, Pooh. Owl, could you rescue him on your back? I don't think so, said Owl, after grave thought. It is doubtful if the necessary dorsal muscles. Then would you fly to him at once and say that rescue is coming? And Pooh and I will think of a rescue and come as quick as ever. We can. Oh, and don't talk, Owl. Go on quick. And still thinking of something to say, Owl flew off. Look at those sun rays coming into. Now then, Pooh, said Christopher Robin, where's your boat? I ought to say, explained Pooh, as we talked down to the shore of the island, that it isn't just an ordinary sort of boat. Sometimes it's a boat, and sometimes it's more of an accident. It all depends. Depends on what? On whether I'm on the top of it or underneath it. Oh, well, where is it? There, said Pooh, pointing proudly to the floating bear. It wasn't what Christopher Robin expected, and the more he looked at it, the more he thought what a brave and clever bear Pooh was, and the more Christopher Robin thought the more Pooh looked modestly down his nose and tried to pretend that he wasn't. But it's too small for 2 of us, said Christopher Robin sadly. 3 of us with Piglet. That makes it smaller still. Oh, Pooh Bear, what shall we do? And then this bear, Pooh Bear, Winnie-the-Pooh, FOP, friend of Piglets, RC, Rabbit's companion, and PD, Pole Discoverer, EC and TF, Eeyore's comforter and tail finder. In fact, Pooh himself said something so clever that Christopher Robin could only look at him with a mouth open and eyes staring. Wondering that this is really the pair of very little brain who he have known and loved so long. We might go in your umbrella, said Pooh. We might go in your umbrella, said Pooh. We might go in your umbrella, said Pooh. For suddenly Christopher Robin saw that they might. He opened his umbrella and put it point downwards in the water. It floated but wobbled. Pooh got in. He was just beginning to say that it was all right now when he found that it wasn't. So after a short drink, which he didn't really want, he waded back to Christopher Robin. Then they both got in together and it wobbled no longer. I shall call this boat the Brain of Pooh, said Christopher Robin. And the Brain of Pooh set sail forthward in the southwestern direction, revolving gracefully. You can imagine Piglet's joy when at last the ship came in sight of him. In after years, he liked to think that he had been in a very grave danger during the terrible flood. But the only danger he had really been in was in the last half hour of his imprisonment, when Owl, who had just flown up, sat on a branch of his tree to comfort him and told him a very long story about an ant who had once laid a seagull's egg by mistake. And the story went on and on and on, rather like this sentence, until Piglet, who was listening out of his window without much hope, went to sleep quietly and naturally, slipping slowly out of the window towards the water until he was only hanging on by his toes, at which moment, luckily, a sudden loud squeak from Owl, which was really part of the story, began what his aunt said, woke the Piglet up and just gave him time to jerk himself back into safety and say, "How interesting." And did she, when well? You can imagine his joy when he saw at last. He saw the good ship, the brain of Pooh, Captain C. Robin, First Mate P. Bear coming over the sea to rescue him. And that is really the end of the story. And as I am very tired after that last sentence, I think I shall stop there. Can you see Piglet? All right. We have one more chapter. One more. Winnie-the-Pooh, Winnie-the-Pooh. Chapter 10, in which Christopher Robin gives Pooh a party and we say goodbye. One day, Jocelyn, when the sun had come back over the forest, bringing with it the scent of May, and all the streams of the forest were tickling happily to find themselves their own pretty shape again. And the little pools lay dreaming of the life they had seen, in the big things they had done, and in the warmth and the quiet of the forest. The cuckoo was trying over his voice carefully and listening to see if he liked it. And wood pigeons were complaining gently to themselves in their lazy, comfortable way that it was the other fellow's fault. But it didn't matter Jocelyn very much. On such a day as this, Christopher Robin whistled in a special way he had. An owl came flying out of the 100 Acre Wood to see what was wanted. "Owl," said Christopher Robin. I am going to give a party." "You are you?" said Owl. "And it's to be a very special sort of party because of what Pooh did when he did what he did to save Piglet from the flood." "Oh, that's what it's for, it is," said Owl. "Yes, so will you tell Pooh as quickly as you can and all the others, because it will be tomorrow." "Oh, it will it?" said Owl, still being as helpful as possible. "So will you go and tell them, Owl?" Owl tried to think of something very wise to say, but couldn't. So he flew off to tell the others. And the first person he told was Pooh. "Pooh," he said, "Christopher Robin is giving a party." "Oh," said Pooh. And then seeing that Owl expected him to say something else, he said, "Will there be those little cake things with pink sugar icing?" Owl felt that it was rather beneath him to talk about little cake things with pink sugar icing, so he told Pooh exactly what Christopher Robin had said and flew off to Eeyore. "A party for me?" thought Pooh to himself. "How grand!" And he began to wonder if all the other animals would know that it was a special Pooh party, and if Christopher Robin had told them about the floating bear and the brain of Pooh and all the wonderful ships he had invented and sailed on. And he began to think how awful it would be if everybody had forgotten about it and nobody quite knew what the party was for. And more he thought about this, the more the party got muddled in his mind, like a dream when nothing goes right, and the dream began to sing itself over in his head until he became a sort of song. It was an anxious Pooh song. 3 cheers for Pooh. For who? For Pooh. Why? What did he do? I thought you knew. He saved his friend from a wedding. 3 cheers for Bear. For where? For Bear. He couldn't swim, but he rescued him. He rescued who? Oh, listen, do. I am talking of Pooh. Of who? Of Pooh. I'm sorry, I keep forgetting. Well, Pooh was a bear of enormous brain. Just say it again. Of enormous brain. Of enormous what, Jocelyn? Well, he ate a lot, and I don't know if he could swim or not, but he managed to float on a sort of boat. On a sort of what? Well, a sort of pot. So now let's give him 3 hearty cheers. So now let's give him 3 hearty witches. And hope he'll be with us for years and years and grow in health and wisdom and riches. 3 cheers for Pooh. For who? For Pooh. 3 cheers for Bear. For where? For Bear. 3 cheers for the wonderful Winnie-the-Pooh. Just tell me, somebody, what did he do? While this was going on inside him, Owl was talking to Eeyore. Eeyore, said Owl, Christopher Robin is giving a party. Very interesting, said Eeyore. I suppose they will be sending me down the odd bits which got trampled on. Kind and thoughtful. Not at all. Don't mention it. There is an invitation for you. What's that like? An invitation? Yes, I heard you. Who dropped it? This isn't anything to eat. It's asking you to the party tomorrow. Eeyore shook his head slowly. You mean Piglet, the little fellow with excited ears. That's Piglet. I'll tell him. No, said Owl, getting quite fussy. It's you! Are you sure? Of course I'm sure. Christopher Robin said, all of them. Tell all of them. All of them except Eeyore. All of them, said Owl sulkily. Said Eeyore. A mistake, no doubt, but still I shall come. Only don't blame me if it rains. But it didn't rain. Christopher Robin had made a long table out of long pieces of wood, and they all sat around it. Christopher Robin sat at one end, and Pooh sat at the other, and between them on one side were Owl and Eeyore and Piglet, and between them on the other side was Rabbit and Roo and Kanga, and all of Rabbit's friends and relations spread themselves about on the grass and waited hopefully in case anybody spoke to them or dropped anything or asked them the time. It was the first party to which Roo had ever been, and he was very excited. As soon as ever they had sat down, he began to talk. Hello, Pooh, he squeaked. Hello, Roo, said Pooh. Roo jumped up and down in his seat for a little while and then began again. Hello, Piglet, he squeaked. Piglet waved a paw at him, being too busy to say anything. Hello, Eeyore, said Roo. Eeyore nodded gloomily at him. It will rain soon. You see if it doesn't, he said. Roo looked to see if it didn't, and it didn't, so he said, Hello, Owl. And Owl said, Hello, my little fellow, in a kindly way, and went on telling Christopher Robin about an accident which had nearly happened to a friend of his whom Christopher Robin didn't know. And Kanga said to Roo, Drink up your milk first, dear, and talk afterwards. So Roo, who was drinking his milk, tried to say that he could do both at once and had to be patted on the back and dried for quite a long time afterward. When they had all nearly eaten enough, Christopher Robin banged on the table with a spoon, and everybody stopped talking and was very silent, except Roo, who was just finishing a loud attack of hiccups and trying to look as if it was one of Rabbit's relations. "This party, Jocelyn," said Christopher Robin, "is a party because of what someone did, and we will all know who it was, and it's his party because of what he did, and I've got a present for him, and here it is." Then he felt about a little and whispered, "Where is it?" While he was looking, Eeyore coughed in an impressive way and began to speak. "Friends," he said, including oddments, "it is a great pleasure, or perhaps I had better say it has been a pleasure so far to see you at my party. What I did was nothing. Any of you except Rabbit and Owl and Pooh and Kanga would have done the same. Oh, and Pooh too. My remarks do not, of course, apply to Piglet and Roo because they are too small. Any of you would have done the same, but it just happened to be me. It was not, I need hardly say, with an idea of getting what Christopher Robin is looking for now." And he put his front leg to his mouth and said in a loud whisper, "Try under the table, that I did what I did because I feel that I should do what we can help. I feel that we should all." "Ha, ha, ha," said Roo accidentally. "Roo, dear," said Kanga reproachfully. "Was it me?" asked Roo, a little surprised. "What's Eeyore talking about?" Piglet whispered to Pooh. "I don't know," said Pooh rather dolefully. "I thought this was your party. I thought it was once, but I suppose it isn't." "I'd sooner it was yours than Eeyore's," said Piglet. "So would I," said Pooh. said Roo again. "As I was saying," said Eeyore loudly and sternly, "as I was saying when I was interrupted by various loud sounds, I feel that—" "Here it is!" cried Christopher Robin excitedly. "Pass it down to silly old Pooh. It's for Pooh." "For Pooh?" said Eeyore. "Of course it is, the best bear in all the world." "I might have known," said Eeyore. "After all, one can complain. I have my friends. Somebody spoke to me only yesterday, and was it last week or the week before, Jocelyn? The rabbit bumped into me and said, 'Bother, the social round. Always something going on.'" Nobody was listening, for they were all saying, "Open it, Pooh! What is it, Pooh? I know what it is." "No, you don't," and the other helpful remarks of this sort. And of course, Pooh was opening it as quickly as ever he could, but without cutting the string, because you never know what a bit of string might be how useful. At last, it was undone. When Pooh saw what it was, he nearly fell down. He was so pleased. It was a special pencil case. There were pencils in it marked B for bear, and pencils marked HB for helping bear, and pencils marked BB for brave bear. There was a knife for sharpening the pencils, and an India rubber for rubbing out anything which you had spelt wrong, and a ruler for ruling lines for the words to work on, and inches marked on the ruler in case you wanted to know how many inches, Jocelyn, anything was, and the blue pencils, red pencils, and green pencils for saying special things in blue, red, and green. And all these lovely things were in little pockets for their own special case, which shut with a click when you clicked it. And they were all for Pooh. "Ah," said Pooh. "Oh, Pooh!" And everyone except Eeyore. "Thank you," growled Pooh. But Eeyore was saying to himself, "This writing business, pencils and whatnot, overrated. If you ask me, silly stuff, nothing in it. Later on, when they all said goodbye and thank you to Christopher Robin, Pooh, Piglet walked home thoughtfully together in a golden evening, and for a long time, they were silent. When you wake up in the morning, Pooh, said Piglet at last, what's the first thing you say to yourself? What's for breakfast? Said Pooh. What do you say, Piglet? I say, I wonder what's going to happen exciting today, said Piglet. Pooh nodded thoughtfully. It's the same thing, he said. And what did happen? Asked Christopher Robin. When? The next morning. I don't know. Could you think and tell me and Pooh sometime? If you wanted it very much. Pooh does, said Christopher Robin. He gave a deep sigh, picked up his bear by the leg, and walked off to the door, trailing Winnie-the-Pooh behind him. At the door he turned and said, coming to see me have my bath? I might, I said. Was Pooh's pencil case any better than mine? It was just about the same, I said. He nodded and went out, and in a moment I heard Winnie-the-Pooh bump, 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 going up the stairs behind him. You gave me Christopher Robin, and then you breathed new life in Pooh. Whatever of each has left my pen goes homing back to you. My book is ready and comes to greet the mother it longs to see. It would be my present to you, my sweet, if it weren't your gift to me. And that, my friends, is the end of the first installment of Winnie-the-Pooh. Now there is a second one. We'll do that another time, of the House of Pooh Corner. But just a little fun thing. One of Jocelyn's favorite songs to listen to in the car is The House of Pooh Corner by Kenny Loggins. Look it up on Amazon Music or Alexa or something. And of course, this is no endorsement at all. I hope y'all enjoyed the stories of Winnie-the-Pooh. And I hope you enjoyed Jocelyn's 100 Acre Wood tree of Winnie-the-Pooh. And our Eeyores. Jocelyn's Eeyore. Hers smells so good. Have a blessed week, and we will see you in February for Stories of Love. Bye-bye. Winnie-the-Pooh, Winnie-the-Pooh.